Hey, my name's Alex, and today we're going to be installing the TruckSpy ELD and dash camera. Now, if at any point in time you feel uncomfortable with the install, please feel free to reach out to us and we will put you in contact with our wide network of installers. Before we get started on the install, a quick couple things. This is a 2022 Chevy Silverado 3500 dually 1-ton pickup truck. It was used for hotshot. This is my personal truck. Now, your truck may be different, right? And so you can use this video not exactly as a step-by-step guide, but more or less the idea of, the A-pillars are basically the same on all trucks, right? The curtain side airbags are the same on most, 1-ton pickups. And if you have a tractor trailer or a semi class 8 truck, then same thing. You might not have the airbag, but it's a good idea to zip tie to the wiring harness that's in your A-pillar, right? So there's things that remain constant regardless of what vehicle you drive. And then as for the hardware, the camera and the ELD, you might only buy the camera from TruckSpy and you won't have an ELD, so feel free to skip that step. And your wiring harness might not be exactly like mine, but the key thing is the wiring harness cannot be messed up. If you pay attention to the plugs, they can only go in one way. So just keep those things in mind and let's get started. Let's go over really quickly what's included and what tools you need. First up, we have the wire harness that connects actually right into the OBD2 port. That is the engine diagnostic plug. So that's where the ELD will be able to read the data from the engine computer. Then we have the charger for the camera, or the power brick. So this makes the voltage correct that the camera will accept. Then we have the actual ELD. If you don't have an ELD, you can totally disregard this. And then we have the actual camera itself on a couple of long wires. And there's another box right here. This box is the data signal box, right? So it's connected to mobile towers. And so that's how your footage gets uploaded all the time. As for tools, you will need either a flathead screwdriver or like a pry bar trim tool. Then you'll need a ratchet and a socket. This is a 10mm for the bolts that we'll be unscrewing. And then you need a T25, so that's a Torx 25 with the security. So that's the hole right in the middle. That's the difference between a regular Torx and the security. So we will need that to just adjust the camera. Obviously, then you need either a screwdriver or a drill to use that. And then I'd recommend having a flashlight because we will be under the dash. It's gonna be nice and dark in there, so a flashlight. And right now it is warm in Texas, and so I don't need the heat gun, but maybe during colder seasons, or if you're in a state where it is colder, definitely a heat gun is recommended to warm up your glass so that then the adhesive on the camera itself will stick much better. An alternative to a heat gun is adhesion promoter, right? So you can use that as well. All right, so our first step is to remove the plastic on this A-pillar. This is where we'll be running the wire. And so to do that, we need to remove these two plastic covers to access the bolts. You want to use your trim tool here with the angle, and you just pull the plastic cover like this, put it in there and pop this out. Then we grab our 10mm socket and ratchet and we unscrew these two bolts. All right, my truck had a clip at the top over here, so we'll move that out of the way. All right, now grab your camera and your screwdriver or drill, and you wanna unscrew these bolts so you can adjust this mount right here, like this. You wanna twist it down because we're gonna be mounting this obviously on the windshield like that, and you wanna make sure you have that adjustment available. Now we wanna make sure we have a nice clean surface, so this is an isopropyl alcohol wipe, and so we wanna just wipe that down right over here like that. And then like I mentioned before, if the weather was colder right now and your windshield is cold, then you'd want to use your heat gun, warm up that spot, or some adhesion promoter. This would be the time to use it. But because right now it is very hot outside, I don't know if you can see I'm sweating or not, but right now we don't need it because the windshield is very, very warm. And we just want to ensure that our camera doesn't come off while we're driving down the road. Peel off your double-sided tape and then position the camera right over here. I think over like that. And then you just want to maybe hold it for a little bit so it sticks onto the windshield really good. Now with this wire, we can tuck it right behind our headliner right in there. Let me try to reposition the camera so you can see it. Now as for the excess wire, we will take it and tuck it into our headliner right over here. We can just take it like this, make sure there's obviously enough slack. And so then we will just take it, and with our trim tool or a flathead screwdriver, we can either pull down the headliner just a tad and then put it right in there and then just pull that out like that. and then we'll just do it all the way across. Now, really quick, a couple of tips about the location and placement of your camera. So first and foremost, you want to make sure the orientation is correct. And what the sticker and these are LEDs, these two right next to the camera, those need to be oriented towards the driver, right? This is the driver facing camera, and the other side needs to look over your hood onto the road. So just make sure you're putting your camera correctly this way. The other thing is your placement, right? You want to make sure it's in the path of your windshield wipers. During bad weather, you want to make sure your windshield wipers are keeping your windshield clean, but also so that your camera sees and protects you in case there is actually an accident. The other thing is in the center of your windshield, as close to the center. You can see here's my center screen, and it's right in the center, right? So make sure you're placing it in the center. And the last and final thing, want to make sure it's not too low, right? At the end of the day, we don't need this blocking your visibility. You know, the safety benefits that come from having a dash camera would outweigh if you can't see past it, right? So ideally, you want the camera to be below your rear view mirror if you have one. If you don't have one, then that's fine. But ideally, the camera needs to be below your rear view mirror so it can still see you, but high enough that it is kind of hidden or tucked behind the rear view mirror so that it's not impeding any additional visibility to you when you're trying to look on the road. Once you get to the corner, you want to make sure that you are not in any way, shape, or form messing with this airbag. Most vehicles will have an airbag here, and so you can see the factory wiring is tucked behind the airbag, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the wire here, and we're going to secure it with the included zip ties. So it will have zip ties, and so here's where you want to use some of those to mount it securely. And then this box is for your cell reception, so you can see it says Skyward, and then the tape is on the bottom. And so we'll want to make sure we stick this somewhere on the dash. That would be ideal for reception. But it is totally fine if you want to make sure drivers aren't messing with this at all. You could totally tuck it underneath the dash, but we'll mount this one right on top of the dash right now. And then this other wire, you want to just feed it down through here and then catch it in the bottom. All right, now you want to grab the rest of your wiring and we want to connect it. So this is the main harness that plugs into your OBD2 port, and you want to find these plugs right here. And so then you can see one has a black side and a white side. So then you find the white side, it has 6 pins. So this one has 8, so it obviously doesn't go there. This one has 6, so we plug it into here. The clip on the plug goes where the little notch is, so it doesn't disconnect during vibrations or transit. And then this end will connect to the plug that we just fed through the dash. Now, a quick couple tips about zip tying your wires under your dash. First, if you have a semi, you'll probably have a lot more space, and this may not even apply to you. But if you are trying to install it maybe in a hotshot setup like this one, then you want to look out for 2 main things. First is your e-brake, right? I have an electronic e-brake on this truck, but you might have a pedal e-brake, right? Your handbrake or your emergency brake, whatever you want to call it. So you want to keep in mind you're not accidentally zip tying to your e-brake. Second is your hood release, right? You want to keep in mind that your hood release, that's just you just pull it and it moves. So you want to be careful you don't zip tie it to your hood release. If you have a pickup truck like mine, then you have an OBD2 plug, and we include a bracket for you to use if your OBD2 doesn't come up with just a clip and it has bolts like this truck does. I did have to unscrew these bolts. So if you have a semi, you have a 9-pin, and it's the same thing. It's a splitter, so you just connect it. Moving right along, this metal bracket that held my factory OBD2 plug, it got a little bit in the way of the included TruckSpy bracket, so I had to bend it with a little bit of pliers to make sure the bolts or the bolt holes align. So let's do a quick review. So we have our wire that comes in from the dash camera, goes through the dash, it connects into our power supply, and then from there it connects into our harness, right? And on the harness you will find your ELD plug, and then from there it goes into the splitter. Now, I strongly recommend you take a look at your truck and see if you can remove the knee panel or this lower part of the dash, because that will help you a lot with accessibility and ease of zip tie use, right? Or ease of zip tying the wires, right? because it's really hard to reach up under there and zip tie with one hand. And so by removing this panel, that'll help you with that. On this truck, I could not remove this panel because it's screwed into many different places, but I could remove the steering column panel, and that's what I decided to do. And that helped drastically with accessibility. But please keep in mind, this is a very important step because you don't want any of your not zip tied items or wires to fall down in front of your brake pedal while you're driving. So be patient here, do it diligently because you want to make sure it stays up there and never in the way of your foot. All right, let's talk zip tie location. I'm using this metal bar. It's out of the way of everything. If you're in a semi, you definitely have more room than I do right now, but the concept remains the same, that everything needs to be tucked away nice and neat. Something really quick to keep in mind about your ELD zip tie location is that the higher up, the better the reception the ELD will get. So, because there's a SIM card and cell receptors in the ELD, you want to make sure, ideally if you can, mount it on your dash, but this was the location that I had to use in this truck just because it was a tight confined space, but it should still work. It's just not ideal for performance. Now, the issue I ran into is one zip tie cannot grab all the wires at once, so I'm zip tying them one at a time. Not one at a time, but I'm zip tying a couple of wires with one zip tie, and because there's like, 4 or 5 wires, you had to use 3 zip ties just to tie everything else up nice. All right, and that was the last one. And so this is what a clean install would look like. And so that basically wraps it up. All right, now for the fun part, put it all back together. So start with the panels you removed and then the A-pillar panel, and from there double check if everything you did is correct. So on the ELD, there's actually 2 lights, and you can see here's mine right there. And then on the dash cam, there's also those 2 LEDs that we mentioned. A green and a red one means it's good. It just means that it's not recording. When it's green and green, that means it is recording. So just keep that in mind. And so you want to log into your account and make sure the camera is good, and then tighten it down all the way. If you have any questions about the install, please leave a comment down below or reach out to us through the website, truckspy.io. Thank you.